All right. Make sure everyone's ready to start recording and ask me. And there we go. All right. We are recording and we are live.
Awesome.
So, for the first time, episode 1. Welcome everybody to episode 1 of a brand new podcast that's going to be a part of this One More Light channel. This is going to be a series called Guys Night. And I just wanted to basically start a new series where it's going to be a discussion with a group of great guys that I know. Some of them have even been former guests on the show. And we're going to go over, really, this is going to be a more laid back, casual style of conversation and podcast. And it is going to be, wide ranging topics, anything. We're going to stream live. We'll answer questions in the comments. We may talk about any kind of topic, fun things, serious things. And overall, we're going to still focus on mental health, the lens of mental health. But kind of what I was joking about with our first co-host who's here with me, Jesse, earlier, is that everything can kind of be related to mental health, in my opinion. So no matter the topic, in some way, there's a road to how it impacts your mental health, whether that's negatively or positively. And so we're going to talk about all kinds of things. We're going to have a specific topic or focus that we sometimes talk about, but we might talk about things like video games. We might talk about beer. We might laugh and joke about other dumb shit. So welcome to our opening episode, and I will at that point leave it to you, Jesse. How you doing, buddy? Thank you for joining me.
I'm doing good. Surviving this freezing cold Maine winter that we're having. It's funny, as we were talking before, it's like it's 60 degrees in my house right now, and I'm in a t-shirt feeling plenty warm. If I step outside that door, it's about 2 degrees. So
no shit. Oh my God. Oh. God, that just gave me the chills. Yep. Oh no, I don't want to deal with that. I forgot. It's still
we got snow on the ground.
Yep. Wow. Yeah. No, we're in the 70s out here in Texas. So.
The funny thing is, so now I'm gotten pretty used to the cold, like the winter that we're having. Like I've adjusted to it now. So if I flew to Texas right now, I would probably start sweating in 70-degree weather.
Oh, well, I am glad I can take the heat. I cannot deal with the cold, so you can keep all that for yourself. I am happy with our weather right now. This is actually the best time of year in Texas, if you ask me. Like the winter months, because the summers, I don't mind them that much, but, it does get a little annoying for it to be 100 degrees for, 3 weeks in a row.
I don't care if it's a dry heat. 100 degrees is just hot.
It's hot. Yeah, it gets a little annoying, but for a lot of us, for most of the summer when it's the hottest, like I literally I go from my air-conditioned apartment to my air-conditioned car to my air-conditioned office, and then in reverse I do that. And the only time I'm really outside in the heat for any extended period of time is like running errands, or if we go to the lake or to the beach or something. And so, it's not like I'm out there having to actually deal with it.
If it was 70 to 75 degrees here, I would probably have my air conditioner on.
I think that's most people. But anyway, dude, I really do appreciate you joining me, especially for episode number 1. I had this idea to start this and start this new series on the channel for a few reasons. I'm not going to stop producing the kind of content that, I had previously produced on the channel when it comes to one-on-one interviews and some of the more creative stuff that I've tried my hand at. I was kind of exploring myself and what it was that I wanted to do, how I wanted to create, what I could create. And I'm glad I did it, and I'm going to stick with it. But a lot of those things, they're harder to organize. They take more time if you're going to produce something of quality. And they're a lot more labor intensive, and
it's more formal,
and it's a lot more formal. Yeah. And so, and that prevents some realities even from, being spoken, because it is that more formal kind of thing. And so I started thinking, and I remember we used to do a podcast together. We've done podcasts together in the past. We had that beer podcast for a long time, more laid back and chill kind of vibe. And I thought, okay, maybe something like that could be fun to do, not in replacement of the other things that I was doing, but in addition to. And so, if I meet somebody interesting who a more professional, formal one-on-one kind of interview is appropriate to get that person's kind of insight on whatever their expertise is, then I'll still do those things as they come along. But it can also be fun, on a more regular basis to just kind of talk, with some intelligent, great friends that I got, like yourself, about all kinds of topics. And, I think it could still be, very relatable to the other things that I was doing on the channel. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
No, I agree with you. The good thing about having a more relaxed conversation is that I personally think conversation rolls better in a more relaxed atmosphere than in the more kind of formal interview kind of way. I mean, that's not to say that you can't have good conversations while conducting an interview, but when you're having basically just a relaxed conversation, it can go really anywhere, and it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more depth to it, I think, sometimes. But that's just kind of my hot take, I guess.
Yeah, sorry, my ADHD, as we were joking about before I started recording, it has been on overdrive all day, and so I'm over here like trying to manage other things, and I put myself on mute. But no, I completely agree. A more natural conversation, more laid back conversation can be great, but it was also scary to jump into, right? Like, well, I don't know if scary is the right word, but the fact is that when I even started this channel, one of the things that I was really exploring with everything that I was creating. If you go back and you watch, if you're, if you've been a part of everything that I've been trying to do for the last year, if you go back and watch the first ones, I was literally like, it was an experiment in learning to find my own voice. Like my first videos were just me like letting things out as truthfully and honestly as I could and sharing it with the world. And,
which I'm sure was therapeutic too.
It was therapeutic, and that was kind of the point of it, and that's why I continued to do it. And I had to push myself through a lot of self-doubt that I still do. Like, oh, am I going to seem like just some dude who's trying to am I coming off like I just want attention, me, look at me, blah, blah, blah. No, but it's because I had always, throughout almost my entire life, I've been the kind of person who doesn't share himself openly. I've written a story, actually, a short story, called about, my mask, and basically a mask that I've been wearing my entire life. I don't speak the truth. I don't just let my own voice out for most of my life. And so starting this channel was really just an experiment and a therapeutic act in that case for me, of sharing the real me, not just with a therapist. I had been to therapy, but sharing it publicly and posting it on social media and things, that wasn't to gain attention. That wasn't necessarily to gain an audience. It was to prove to myself that I could share the real me as open with the world, like literally with the world. And I didn't have to be afraid. I didn't have to be afraid of what people thought or who was going to judge me or whatever. I continue to be afraid of those things. Those things still come up in my mind from time to time, but it's like it was me building that muscle, and I continue to build that muscle by, you know what, I want to do this thing, I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to talk myself out of it because of fear of sharing things. And so it was kind of a journey to get to this, and this is the next stage apparently. So, and I don't know, we'll see where it goes from there.
as you took off those masks, as you eloquently put it, do you feel like you were able to strip those masks that you wore throughout all aspects of your life? Because most people, I think, wear multiple masks throughout the day.
Point. Yeah, oh man, that's actually a great point. No, and I do think that that's where the work in progress continues. And
I think those masks can serve a positive purpose also, but I was just curious.
Okay, yeah, and actually that's a good point as well. And so I've worn masks my entire life, and you're right. I do think as well that it can serve a purpose. Like you can't, like, I'm from the hood, like I'm from Jersey, I'm from Patterson, New Jersey, and I can be pretty hood, I can be pretty raw, I can be pretty real. And it doesn't mean that I'm not being the real me because I know how to not, go off on a profanity laced tangent while I'm in the middle of a boardroom with a bunch of executives, right? And so that is, it's a form of wearing a mask, yeah. But the difference being to what you're asking is that's a situation where hopefully you're wearing it voluntarily, right? You're doing you're making the choice to wear that mask voluntarily. I feel like a lot of the masks that I was wearing through a lot of my life, I wasn't doing voluntarily. I was doing it out of fear. I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it in spite of me, right? And I was doing it out of fear. And so, yeah, I can still put on a mask when I need to, behave in a certain environment or in a certain way I can. And as a matter of fact, I think, as I've talked about, I got really good at wearing the mask. And so what actually ended up happening is that now that actually, like, it kind of became a benefit. Now, if I can learn to share the real me to where wearing the masks isn't, beating me down, I can still do it. And I've gotten really fucking good at it when it's necessary. And you can actually use that to your advantage. And it's
exactly use them to benefit you and to basically like not improve yourself, but basically improve your standing. I think sometimes you have to wear those masks to basically play the game, especially in the work world. You definitely have to wear those masks and play the game if you want to excel until you're basically at the top.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of it came from for me, was survival. I learned to wear those masks out of survival, out of a need of survival, right? If I was going to, from the life that I came from and the bit that I achieved, that I fought and clawed for, that I was scared to lose it. I'm terrified to lose it. Like, oh, well, if I say what I think in this moment, what if they fire me? What if they don't like this? What if this? What if that? How am I going to pay this? How am I going to keep this roof over my head? How am I going to pay this car note? And so you keep wearing the masks even when you feel like you want to take it off, but then you're keeping it on out of fear, is what I found. Is that I was keeping my mouth shut about things that I knew in my heart I shouldn't keep my mouth shut about, but I still did, and I still wore that mask because I was afraid of losing, being judged or losing something, and eventually I walked away from a lot of things, and I spent the earlier part of this year with nothing. I was unemployed. I was broke. I was doing DoorDash just to keep the lights on for months. But I found, and that's when I started this channel, I also found a sense of happiness and a relief that I had never felt before. And now that I'm getting back into, other things in my life, I'm back in the professional world and all of that. It was a good reminder that, oh, that experience taught me that even, if I want to take off my mask, I don't have to be afraid. Like, to this day, I don't give a fuck. You want to fire me? I've been broke. I know what it's like. That was a good reminder. I can survive being broke. I survived. I lived. What I can't survive is wanting to put a bullet in my head at the end of the day every day because I'm miserable at a job that I have to pretend to be somebody I'm not and kiss the ass of somebody I hate. That's what I realized. I can survive being broke. I can't survive that because that pushed me to the point of not wanting to even be around.
Just out of curiosity, so for at least a large portion of your life, you were raised by white grandparents, correct? Does that ever play into the masks that you wear, where since you were raised by white people, do you feel like you need to wear a mask to hide the other aspects? Or do you feel like you have to wear a mask to hide the white influences that you've had?
That's another really good question. And so this was all still the intro, but this is why I'm glad I asked you to join. By the way, for anybody out there, I've got my intro and some of the stuff about me, You know, I'm just a guy who had been through a lot of shit that you can watch other videos about. And I felt, you know, kind of compelled to start this channel. Jesse actually has a background in the social work field and things having to do with mental health and stuff. So that's a big part of why I love having you on the show, by the way. You know, I do feel like when I was a kid, I wore masks a lot because of the biracial thing. Because yes, I was raised in a white household by my white side of my family, but it was also in a primarily Black and Hispanic city and neighborhood.
Yep.
And so in the house, yeah, I was raised in a white household. And as soon as I left the house and I was at school, you know, I'm in a mostly, you know, non-white environment. And so back then I wore the masks, but again, it's one of those things. I hated it at the time. It ended up being a huge benefit. It gave me, I feel like it gave me a perspective and an insight on some things that a lot of other people lack. Like if you grew up in a Black household, in a Black neighborhood, you know, maybe you had one or two white friends, but you really never experienced what it is to be, you know, raised in that kind of culture, then you really don't understand it, you know, no matter what. And then vice versa. You know, if you're some white dude from, you know, all white or Maine or whatever, where you have no exposure to certain, you know, the other side of the spectrum, you know, no matter how much you try, you're never really going to intimately understand it. And so I was able to get this really intimate understanding of two very polar opposite sides of a spectrum, right? And so yeah, it sucked as a kid. Like I never felt like I belonged with the white people. I always felt like an other. And then I never felt like I fully belonged with the Black kids either. I always felt like another with the.
Was that an influence that you put on yourself, or did they make you feel that way?
What do you mean?
So when you say that you felt like you didn't belong, was that a feeling that you kind of had like a self-doubt kind of thing, or was there external influences that were making you feel that way?
Oh yeah, no, it was 100% and a reinforced idea. I mean, I think as a kid, you know, we learn that kind of things, that you are an other. You know, there was a point where I didn't realize I was different than the rest of, you know, my biological family who in the house that I grew up with. You know, I've got cousins. They were just my cousin, and I was just, you know, their cousin. I'm just John to this day. I never felt looked at as that, but the world did eventually teach me that I was different. You know, I've shared stories of, you know, hearing my white side of the family, certain people, I won't say any names or anything, say very, very racist fucking things directly in front of me, because they even forgot that I was Black. And, you know, they'd say things, and then I had a few instances where they'd look at me and they'd be like, oh, fuck, like, whoops, you know, because to them, I was, you know, yeah, I was Black, but I wasn't, you know, I wasn't one of them. I was John. They knew me personally. And so,
right.
You know, but that also let them be a little bit more free with certain things than
they're comfortable
in
around
general public. So
yeah,
I eventually figured out that yes, I am different in that aspect, but it happened on the other side too. Like, dude, I can't tell you how many times, you know, growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up with, going to school, you act so white, you talk white, why you talk like that, you talk white, blah blah blah. Like I used to get that all the time. You know, and that, yeah, I was made to feel like an other almost everywhere. I think I've shared with you privately, it eventually ended up to me, most of my friends, my closest friends in the neighborhood I grew up with are almost all Hispanic. And it just happens to be that that was the cultural group that was most accepting of me, because most of them just thought I was a Spanish guy. Because I didn't look Black and I didn't look white, so most people just assumed I was Puerto Rican or Dominican in the neighborhood I grew up. But at the end of the day, it was traumatizing. I'm saying all these things, but it's also some stuff that I wouldn't really change. I feel like, again, it ended up having a real benefit in the long run, as far as my outlook on, like, it gave me a lot of empathy. Like I can really understand. I feel like when I see conversations, especially online, where there's two sides going at each other who just do not have any ability to fucking understand how the other side
and never will
is, and never will. Like, I have that ability. Like, I've got such a range. My closest friends, like yourself, you're, you know, a giant white dude from Maine. You know, I've got hood friends. I've got extreme left-leaning friends. I've got extreme right-leaning friends. Because again, a lot of that upbringing and everything that I had went through, wearing those masks for so long, pretending to be things that I wasn't, it gave me an understanding of what it means to be on other sides of things.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, I do think it was a benefit, but I am also glad that in this last year, I've learned to also finally acknowledge who I really am and stop wearing masks sometimes. But anyway, thank you. That was a deeper discussion than I was expecting to go into right after the right after the intro.
Well, it's just such a wildly different experience than I've had. Of course, I mean, I'm white. My parents are white. My entire family is very, very white. As is the state I live in is exceptionally white. So.
Didn't you? So
that's basically what you were saying. That's like basically what you're saying, and I wholeheartedly agree that, like, somebody who grows up in the ghettos of Detroit or something, there's no possible way that I could ever fathom understanding what their day-to-day life is like, because it's so wildly different than what my life has been for the 40 years that I've been on the planet. So it's just it's an interesting dynamic, even though I definitely have a background in social work and I've seen a lot of unsettling things. It's still not what my life has been. So I come into these awful situations and I see a snapshot of what that life is like, but then I go home and don't have to live it.
Well, I don't know if me and you have had this conversation, but I've had it with others. That's where the difference between two very important words like empathy and sympathy, right? Like, that's where the difference comes in. Like, sympathy, I think anybody can have sympathy for, you know, those kinds of cases that you've maybe run into as a social worker. Even with everything that I've been through, there are absolutely cases of people that I've met who go through even more, you know, some of the most extreme things where I can't empathize with them. I can sympathize, but I can't empathize. Yeah. Because in order to empathize, my understanding anyway of the difference between the sympathy and empathy is empathy. You have to understand what it's like, and
what you have to be able to put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah,
and understand what it's like.
And if you've never been even close to a situation, then it's really, you can't really have empathy, but you can have sympathy. You can still feel sad from the outside. By the way, I may be off video, but I am still here.
I don't necessarily completely agree with that. I think you still can be empathetic, but it is to be able to be empathetic in that kind of scenario. You have to really, it's not something that everybody can do. You have to really be able to visualize what that experience is like. Mm-hmm. And how it's impacting the person that it's happening to. That doesn't necessarily mean that you really have experienced what they're going through, mm-hmm. but you're able to have a better understanding because you're really seeing it through their lens and not interpreting it through your own experiences.
So it maybe then, because that is the way that I've always viewed the difference between empathy and sympathy. But I'll be honest, that's just based off my own understanding, and it's not necessarally saying that I'm right. In your opinion, why do so many people seem to struggle with empathy? Because I've always been very empathetic.
Yeah, sympathy is, oh goodness, that makes me feel bad, kind of stuff. You will always view things through your own lens. Like, oh my goodness, if that happened to me, that'd be miserable. That's got to be awful. That's sympathy. Empathy is really trying to put yourself in their shoes through their lens and how they're feeling. It's about the other person as opposed to how it's making you feel. Like,
so why do so many people seem to struggle with that?
Empathy is a very, very difficult thing. It's like the whole thoughts and prayers thing. Everybody can say thoughts and prayers. It's very easy to look at things through your own glasses, through your own lens. But it's very hard to really try to see things through the other person's lens, what their experience is, how they're feeling. That's not something that everybody can do, clearly.
Well, and I guess that's maybe where I got my definition of empathy, is because I feel like I do have an easier time doing that because of the things that I've been through, because I know what it means to suffer. I know what it means to be broke. I know what it means to be traumatized. I felt those kinds of experiences. And so even if somebody's going through something where maybe it wasn't the exact same experience, I can feel in myself from my own personal experiences that I've experienced what that feeling must feel like for that person, right?
Yeah.
Maybe your parent died from something different from my parent, but I know what that loss feels like at the end of the day. And so can somebody have a deep level of empathy without having gone through a lot of those things? Is kind of where I'm going with that.
Yeah, so having that shared baseline absolutely aids in the empathetic kind of stream. It absolutely does. All I'm basically saying is that a really empathetic person can still be empathetic even if they haven't experienced the same thing, because they're not bringing themselves, their own experience into it. They're really probing for how it's making the other person feel, what their experience is. It's all about the other person and trying to understand what their experience is.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
It does actually. And I've really had that whole definition that I listed, but that was all developed in my own head. So it's interesting to actually kind of hear a different perspective. And I think actually you're 100% right. And I do get it. And now I'm curious though about the kinds of people that I've run into in my life though. And so what is the difference between somebody who can have empathy and somebody who can't, or somebody who doesn't? Because we do run into that. Empathy is really rare.
Yes, empathy is exceptionally rare.
Especially on the internet. Like, Jesus.
So I don't know if this is like the textbook definition of them, but in my experience, sympathy is looked through the lens of how it would make me feel. You're having this experience, and that would make me feel awful. Empathy is you're having that experience, and I can only imagine how you're feeling.
Okay, that makes sense. So I'm guessing that, I mean, my guess would be a lot of the lack of empathy that we see in the world is just because we've got a lot of self-centered people who don't think about anybody but themselves.
100%. That's the internet in a nutshell.
Yeah, especially on the internet. Yeah.
I think that empathy, you would see it more in face-to-face interactions.
Yeah.
Than you would on
the internet almost encourages not having empathy, even for somebody, even myself actually. I'll admit that actually, now that you make that point, I consider myself an empathetic person, but I have been pretty freaking non-empathetic and pretty shitty on the internet at some points in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I think many people have. I'm sure I'm a social worker, and I'm sure I've been shitty on the internet. So
yeah, unfortunately, I do think it, like the lack of the personal nature of it and the fact that it's just text and words on a screen sometimes. Yeah, it almost
the anonymity
you to be empathetic, right?
Yeah, the anonymity, even though you have a name, whether or not it's really your name or not on the internet, even though there's a name, it's basically just a username. It's like being on a message board, basically.
Yeah. That's how it can start. And so that's a great point, though, to kind of jump into what the overall topic was for tonight's discussion, which is online communities and friendships. Internet friendships through gaming, social media, whatever the case may be. Basically, relationships that are formed outside of traditional means. In other words, through technology. Back in the day, to make a friend, you had to meet somebody in reality in the world. get to know that person and, face to face and become friends over time. And then through technology, like we've gotten to a point where now we have, friendships that can be formed through these internet communities. And so to your point, it can start as, yes, it is just a screen name, or it is just words and you can launch vitriol at each other because that's not a person. But we're in a point in society now where that can go past that. And me and you are an example of that.
Yes, when you and I first started talking, you were the dude who made playlists in a Facebook group.
Yeah, and you were a moderator of a video game group when I first interacted with you, that we were both a part of, and it was just a group of thousands at that. Was it hundreds of thousands? Maybe
it was a couple of thousand. It was a couple thousand people.
It was a couple of thousand, but there were only like dozens at most who were like consistently active.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe 100.
Like daily active in the group with comments and interacting and stuff. And so we were among those. And yeah, you just started off as words on a screen, and lo and behold, what's it been now? More than 10 years.
It's probably been 10-ish years. 2013. Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah, and so from some random interaction in a random video game group on a random social media network, from there it's developed into we talked for years, and then it went into we did a podcast together. I've flown out to meet you in person. Our daughters became friends over the years. We're planning another trip and another visit, and at this point, you said it in a private message that we were talking about, and I 100% agree. I consider you one of my closest friends. At some points, my closest friend. Right now, probably you would qualify as that as well. The closest friend that I really have. And we talk regularly, and I consider you a legitimate good friend. And even more, if you say that, like one of the best friends that I
you're definitely one of my best friends.
And a lifelong friend at this point. I told you the other day, like there is no point, no matter how long it may go, no matter how long we may not talk to each other, there is no point where I end up somewhere near Maine and don't send you a message like, hey, you want to go grab a beer?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about those online communities and friendships, because there's stigma behind it. There is a lot of toxicity, and it can be hard to make those friendships. But I think me and you are an example of, but there's gold out there as well. Like, and I spend a lot of time, admittedly, in past shows that I've had in some of my interviews, shitting on social media, because there are a lot of downsides to social media.
Yes, there is.
If it wasn't for social media, I wouldn't have met one of my best friends, the best friends of my life. If it wasn't for social media, and if it wasn't for video games and those groups. So kind of talk about, what are your thoughts on the upsides and the downsides and the benefits versus the costs?
What the social networks, I think, are an interesting dynamic, because you can absolutely meet people and even start creating a relationship, like a friendly relationship with people, and then they turn out to be a completely different person than you ever expected them to be. There's something comes up and there is no sign of it, and they end up being a completely different person than you expect them to be. But then on the flip side of that, you can build these relationships, and the people that are involved can be genuine, good people, and that can blossom into being real connections, which I have definitely felt multiple times. Like you were just outlining, you're easily one of my best friends. And not only online, like you were saying, like in real life friends.
It's funny that there is still that distinction. It's blurred over time. Where I don't have to explain as much as I used to have to when I say that you're my friend. I don't have to explain as much as when we first met 10 years ago. He's a friend of the internet. He's an internet friend.
Right.
I could just say you're my friend. And the fact that we interact mostly on the internet doesn't, make anybody feel weird, but it used to.
Right. Right. Rob Rinaldi, who is a mutual friend of both of ours, is easily one of my best friends. Derek Teague, who I think we both know would be a very close friend of mine on the internet. But I've also had negative experiences where I had become Facebook friends with people, and then
yes, you can make Facebook friends and Facebook enemies for life.
right.
I've got a few. I've got a few. I won't name names. I'll name the friends. Let's stick with naming the friends, but let's keep the enemies names censored. But yeah, I have my list. We've discussed them in private. But yeah, you can make both.
Yes, you can. It's just an interesting dynamic where it really feels like it takes longer on the internet to really get to know somebody than it does in person, but it can still happen.
Yeah. You know what that makes me think of too, where, when you can make on, through social media and the internet connections, you can make really good friends and you can make really good enemies. I think there's, even in myself, a belief that you can be very fake. Like the internet is very fake. People can be very fake. But on the flip side, where you can make some really good friends or some really, really deep enemies as well, is that on the internet, you can really just be the real you more so than in even real life sometimes.
So, but I think the funny thing is that I think the internet personas are not the real person. I think a lot of these individuals that run off their mouths are fake on the internet. I don't think that internet persona is the real person. If you go and meet them in real life, I think they would act very, very differently. And the anonymity of the internet provides them a screen, like a literal and figurative screen, where they can act out however they want to. It's not necessarily reflective of who they are as a person, but they can act out some of those more baser instincts.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I was getting at as well, is that there's two sides to that, where you can be a fake version of yourself. You can be, tough and angry,
caricature of yourself.
Or you can present like you're some confident this and that. I've been guilty of that at times in my life, when I'm posting on social media with my bicep flexed in the gym, like I'm so happy and killing it and productive, but meanwhile you don't see that I'm at home at night crying alone because I'm depressed and I'm sad and I'm lonely. So guilty, right? But and I think a lot of us can be in some ways, but
the funny thing about that, though, since you bring that up, is that if you did make posts where you're crying at night or any of those kinds of things, that can have very negative results also, because when people go on Facebook, they don't want to see that kind of stuff. So if you put that stuff into the world, they want to see you flexing in a mirror. They don't want to see you breaking down at night. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It really does, and it touches on one of the topics that is in the title of this episode. We've talked about the friendships and the enemies you can make, but the other part of the title of this episode is online communities, and where you just what you were just talking about. If you're talking about your public Facebook profile, like in general, like it's very weird for somebody to share, hey, I'm sad and lonely in my room crying right now, on their regular like Facebook page. Like not to say that
they're made fun of.
Not to say that they deserve to be judged, but even me, like, I'll awkwardly kind of like scroll past it sometimes if somebody shares that openly on their public page, right? Like I don't know what to say or how to interact in that form. But on the flip side, we do have what me and you really connected in are these online communities, these smaller communities that are more focused. They're typically smaller groups, and we could even be talking in the thousands, but still, it's not like the entire, billion of people on Facebook who have access to it.
Right.
Or, your entire family and friends list. These are smaller communities that are, as we met, it was based around video games. And now I've got a community for men's support and stuff. And so if you want to go to those groups and share things that are related to the topics of that group, then it's more appropriate, right? And so that's where I was getting at earlier with, yeah, there's this ability to be fake on the internet, but there's also an ability to be more real than you can in real life. And I remember with you guys, I've been a gamer my entire life, right? Where we met in the video game groups, I've been a gamer my entire life, but I was actually an exception where I grew up. And so in the neighborhood where I grew up, I was the nerd. It was weird that I was into video games. Like I should have been into, the cool shit that, my peers were into and some of my friend group were into. And it was nerdy that I was so into video games. And I never really felt like I was a part of a culture. And it wasn't until I joined those Facebook groups when I don't remember how I stumbled upon the podcasts that the groups were based on, but I found the podcast, and then through the podcast, I heard it said that, oh, there's these Facebook groups of other people who listen to this podcast. And then I ended up in those groups, and it was for the first time that I got to really embrace the nerdy side of that interest that I had my entire life. Like I would try and share how excited I was about video games with the kids that I actually grew up with in some cases. And sometimes I'd get stared at like, dude, shut up. Like, what the fuck you tell you fucking nerd? Like, no one cares. Like I'd be hyped up about, beating, Sephiroth in my favorite game. And I remember telling one of my best friends at the time and being so hyped up. And he's looking at me like with a blank stare, like, the fuck? Like he did not give two shits. And so when I joined those groups, I got to express a real side of me that I really had never been able to express in other places. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I was getting at with that. There are two sides to it where you can be as fake as you want to be, but also you can connect with people because you get a chance in some cases, in that case, to be as the real you for the first time in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I definitely I feel that because I actually found the Facebook groups before I found the podcasts, but within my circle in my day-to-day life, there's nobody who plays video games. I'm it. So that's a mask that I wear basically every day because that's something that I am fervently interested in. But nobody, especially like at work, nobody knows that I'm interested in that because I've never, ever, ever talked about it because nobody there will be interested in it.
And that is a form of wearing a mask, right? Like
yes.
I can't tell you how many times I go into work throughout my life and somebody's asking me about football. I don't give a fuck. But for some reason, socially, like it's normal. Oh, did you see the game last night? But if I come in and I'm like, oh my God, did you play the latest fucking Final Fantasy release? Like everybody would look at me, nobody does that. And so I wear that mask. I don't go into that. And I always find it weird, you sports people, like how you just like feel so comfortable assuming that I give a shit.
Like, that's a social thing. Sports is socially acceptable.
Yeah, it is, but it's always made me feel weird. Like, do I come in and ask you if you watched, random coworker, if you watched the latest episode of this weird fucking show that I'm into or whatever, right?
But that would be acceptable if you asked a coworker, like, hey, have you just happened to like see this show? That would be an acceptable thing to do.
That would also be acceptable. Video game in particular. Like, it would be weird to just some random person in an office and just be, oh my God.
Did you play Zelda?
Did you play this? Yeah, right. Yeah. But I'll just as somebody who's never really given that much of a shit about sports, I can't tell you how I've just gotten used to it now. It's just like it's almost a part of day-to-day life that, oh, okay, this person's going to ask me about sports. And I've just developed these generic responses to pretend that I give a shit what they're talking about. Just to get the conversation over with. Like, oh, that's good. Yeah, okay, yeah.
It is kind of funny because video games it's the biggest money-making industry that exists. It makes more money than movies, TV, more than anything, but it's still like the one topic that you can't just talk about.
Well, anybody. Maybe that's something
like
that might change with generations. I don't know, the younger coworkers at some of the companies I work with, maybe the entry level, 18 to 22-year-olds, they're their little groups are actually fucking talking about the latest Call of Duty map or whatever it might be. But definitely in our generation and generations around it, everybody, oh yeah, it's very normal to talk about, the socially acceptable things, but not the things that I actually give a shit about. And so that's where the internet really did make a difference for me, as I got to discover these online communities. And I think that's another part of this topic that I kind of wanted to discuss, as far as why we're discussing online communities and friendships, is for anybody out there who may be struggling with the negative aspects of social media. You have to seek out the positive sides. Like, and I've heard, this isn't my thought, but I've heard many smart people say on different sources, social media is just a tool, right? The internet's just a tool, and the value or what you get out of it is in how it's used, right? You can use a hammer to beat somebody over the head, or you can use a hammer to build a house, right? It's just a hammer. It's a very addictive hammer that is seducing you into using it more, but it is still just a tool at the end of the day. You do have a choice on how you use it, and I wanted you to give your thoughts on how people can use social media as a tool to help with mental health, to find these online communities and these social groups, and build friendships and build relationships that, like, we've had. I can't tell you how grateful I am for you and a number of other people who were in some of the groups that we've been in over the years through some of the dark times in my life. If it wasn't for you guys, and if it wasn't for the internet, I would have felt and been truly, in a lot of ways, completely alone. And I don't know that I would have made it past it. And so, it definitely was a blessing at that point. So give me your thoughts on that.
No, I agree. I'm not the kind of person that has a deep network of friends, like in my day-to-day real life. I don't know how to refer to it. So the friendships that I've made online, the people that I honestly talk to more than anybody, like you or Rob or Derek or, all of these people that I talk to every day or every other day, really do make it is very, very positive for my mental health. That's why I have, even though I've considered giving up Facebook and things like that, I never could, because honestly, all of the people that I actually desire talking to are all on Facebook. So if I gave up Facebook, my mental health would deteriorate. Because
let me ask you, and it's for a reason I'm asking this question, because I've had the same drive. What has driven you to have that thought or that desire, or if you've even tried it as I have, to give up social media in general? What caused that in you?
It's the negativity on Facebook. It's Facebook is so negative, and you could find any random post on Facebook, like literally about any topic. There's going to be somebody there that is shitting on it. Yeah. And it's just, it's a toxic thing that I don't want in my life. I don't want that. It's why I have completely changed my engagement with Facebook, because previously I would have engaged in that kind of stuff. Like, why are you being like this?
It's almost addictive. Like it's so much more. What's the word that I'm looking for? Like, oh, it's like, it's almost pulls you in. Like I'll read the comment, the same kind of things that you're talking about. I don't know. I'll open the comments on a random post that I don't even give a shit about the post, just because I want to see the negativity in there and be like, oh, I disagree with this. And it's almost addictive, that like I'm addicted to the anger and that feeling that gives me to see this idiot posting their idiot comment, and I want to get mad about it and tell them how much of an idiot they are. Yeah, I don't know.
So it is. I do think it's human nature to be drawn to the negativity. It's why it's so prevalent, is because we just soak it up. We just really, really soak up that negativity. So that's what I wanted to try to. That's why I have thought about getting rid of Facebook, is because if Facebook doesn't exist for me, then I have no outlet to even see those negative things, those negative reactions, influences, all of that stuff. But the flip side of that is that even though I see those things and they give me that moment of like, why am I looking at this? Why am I reading this? Why are you like this? Kind of reactions. I think that would pale in comparison to the lost feelings I would feel if I just didn't have Facebook at all.
Yeah.
Now, I know that you can have Facebook and still have Messenger and things like that, so I could still talk to the people I wanted to talk to. But that's also different too, and that's much more proactive, where I could go onto Facebook and see a post from Rob or something and be like, hey, that's really cool, and comment on it and have a quick little interaction on Facebook, and
or comment on it 9 hours later and then have that conversation.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Where I think like the Messenger thing and the group chat, which we've started a group chat for our men's group, the men's support group, that's more instant. Like nobody's going to respond to a message that was, as if there was a conversation afterwards, nobody's going to go back and respond to that thing from 10 hours ago if there's been 50 messages since then. Whereas, a post on a social media site like Facebook, I can post something and then you might interact 2 days from now, and then we can have a whole conversation, and that can be fun. Facebook in particular is the one that me and you gravitate towards, and it's a particular example of where there's this real cost and benefit that is hard for me and you in particular, because we get such a benefit out of those groups that we're in and the little communities and stuff. But in order to access those things that we get so much benefit from, we also I have to dodge negativity in that fucking news feed, because I remember you mentioned earlier that you curate your Facebook very well and you manage it. I do too, but Facebook will still just put a suggested post in my fucking timeline.
Yes, it does.
Dumb shit that I don't care about, that Facebook decided I should care about. And it's I have to dodge it and not get dragged into that bullshit.
So Facebook was clever in the way that they targeted me. So I do have a very strong interest in basketball, and I was a basketball player. I still watch basketball. So Facebook started sending me all of these, not literally sending me, just putting in my feed, all of these various basketball posts. So now, unless I just actively block all of these pages that Facebook is putting in my feed, it's just I get random posts about these random things like who's better, LeBron James or Michael Jordan.
Oh yeah.
And it's
always just,
and then I'm compulsively have to read the comments because I have my own opinion on that. And then read all of the comments of everybody just fighting with each other. Nobody's going to change each other's mind. It's
everybody's just trying to dunk on each other. Get the most right. Yeah, no, it's crazy. And at least in your case, Facebook is still relevant in what it shows you. I unfollowed so much and unsubscribed from so much, and then they'll give me suggested posts that I'll still dismiss. They're just throwing anything at me now. Where it's nothing that I've even shown interest in. Hip hop beef between one hip hop artist that I've never heard of and another one that I've never heard of. That's the most recent. Facebook has decided that I'm really into hip hop beefs for some reason. And at one point, Facebook had decided that I was really into transgenderism in the swimming, swimming in college and sports and shit.
You probably
this is nothing I searched for, nothing I thought about. Why just Facebook will just randomly, well, what about this? Maybe this will get his ass engaged. And sometimes it fucking works. I'll be in the comments reading comments from people about the beef between two rappers I've never heard of. I'm why am I in why am I even? Oh God, just because
I don't even care about this. Why
yeah,
am I
but I'm
reading
like,
it
oh, I
here?
know somebody's in there fighting about some shit. I'm gonna go check it out. But yeah, on the upside too, though, because I do talk a lot about mental health. Oh, and there was a earlier question that I asked you that I want to get back to. Wanting to give up Facebook. I was curious why. For me, a lot of the reason why I've tried to cut off social media, even in the last year, I've made an effort in it. Not just Facebook, but all social media in general, right? A lot of it has to do with I was doing a lot of research and reading into my own mental health and trying to grow and learn how to be a better person, learn how to be a stronger person, and all of these things. And a lot of the advice out there is, get rid of social media. Focus on reality, focus on the real world. And I figured, well, all right, well, I'm trying to heal, I'm trying to become the kind of person I want to become. And so I decided to give it a try. But I ended up running into the same situation that you're talking about. Like, well, I've got real connections with people on social media. Like, I'm not talking about superficial, I'm commenting on newsfeed shit. I'm talking about if I'm not interacting in this group on Facebook that I've been a part of for over a decade, I'm not getting to have fun conversations with one of my best friends in the world on a daily basis. That's missing out on a big thing in my life.
Yep.
And so I think with that advice, it's a very general piece of advice, but depending on your situation, not only can it not be feasible, it can not be beneficial to you.
Yes.
And so if you're the kind of person out there where whatever the reason is for your life circumstances, you do not have a local real world social group, and potentially there's a person that I'm thinking of in particular, who's a member of our men's group, you cannot build one. It's not possible, based on the circumstances of your life. You can't get out and meet friends. For that kind of person, to tell them that, if they want to heal or if they want to fix themselves, they should give up social media. You may not realize that you're also taking away their only form of social connection. Their only form of social connection. And that can be harmful. And so, for me, I'm a lot like you. I'm living on the other side of the country from all the people that I grew up with. I don't have any friends or any family from my earlier years. I've got my kids, but they're not they're not supposed to be there for me. I'm supposed to be there for them. Right. And so I don't have those close connections, and I've tried to make them, but it's very, very difficult as an adult. And again, for others out there, in some people's case, it's damn near impossible. And so for me to completely separate myself from social media meant a level of isolation that's also not healthy. Because those same people who say cut off social media will also tell you that complete isolation is also not healthy,
right,
at all. And so you gotta, for some people it can be a benefit. If you're one of those people out there, what would you say to those people out there, and what advice would you give as far as using it for the best potential that it has, the good sides, and trying to avoid the negative sides, of what it is?
I do think it's all about curating your experience. So, I mean, Facebook will never, ever allow you to curate it exactly the way you want it, just because it goes completely against what their algorithms and what the goal of Facebook, what their goal as a corporation is. But if you're able to curate your experience, block out the negative influences, and make sure to like and comment on the things you want to see, because that will increase the engagement on the things that you say you want to see and like. You can make that Facebook experience a lot better. Unfollow or completely delete the people or pages or groups that make you feel down. Get that noise out of your life completely. And focus on the ones that you enjoy interacting with, the people that encourage you, that you have fun talking to. That's personally what I think the answer is to making Facebook a tool for your mental health as opposed to a detriment. Personally, you have to bend it to the way that you want to use it.
And I completely agree. But I just want to clarify too. Obviously, me and you, Facebook is our main kind of focus when it comes to that topic. But that goes for all social media platforms. Like you can do that with all social media platforms, and you should.
Yes, you can
with all social media platforms. So whether or not
Twitter is hard, but yeah,
with that, yeah,
Twitter is hard.
I just don't even fuck with Twitter. I honestly, I never understood the point of Twitter. I never got into it, and I'm glad I didn't because it seems like why. And so I'm glad I didn't, and I don't care to know what people like about it because I will never get into Twitter. But yeah, in most cases, you can, find your little communities and the positive, more beneficial. You can curate it to be more positive and beneficial for you. And I would encourage that as well, whether it's Facebook or whatever the case may be. And Facebook, as annoying as they are, for the worst of them, because I still can't avoid the news feed. In order to get to our little communities and our groups, I have to go through there's no just groups app. If they did that, I'd never open regular
they used to have one
again. Yeah, and that's why they got rid of it, is because they knew people were like, well, fuck the regular app, I just want the groups. But they don't advertise in the groups, they don't make money from the groups. And so the groups are such a for people like me and you, right? We found such a value in the groups. And so I'm willing to deal with the other bullshit, the fucking advertising and the negativity that they put in my news feed in order to get the benefit of the groups. And they knew that. That's why they got rid of the groups app. Absolutely.
Right.
And so when it comes to online communities, I do think that they can have a benefit. At this point, I am going to go ahead and move on to listener questions. I didn't know if you had any other kind of thoughts or things you wanted to talk about when it came to that topic specifically, when it comes to online communities and friendships. I know friendships we're going to get into when we talk about the questions from some of our listeners. That's going to touch on that subject. Were there any other things that you kind of wanted to talk about when it comes to that?
No, I think we covered most of it. It is definitely a tricky wire to cross, because it's more than just the groups for me. Like I am interested in what is my brother posting on Facebook? I do have a couple friends that I am interested in. What are they doing?
Yeah, you want to see the new baby or this?
Yeah,
there are friends back from Jersey that I probably would have never talked to again. I haven't been home in 18 years, but I still have a personal connection with them because I keep up with it. I see the new baby, the marriage, the this, the
right,
that,
yeah.
So yeah, it is very helpful for that. I mean, because back in the day, there's a lot of people younger than us who don't know what it's like to not have social media. You could move to the other side of the country, or you could move to the other side of the state. Somebody could die and you wouldn't find out for a long time.
Years.
Yeah. You'd be like, wait, what? That person's gone? Oh, that person's got a baby and I've got a 13-year-old niece. What? So again, yeah, I think I personally spend a lot of time shitting on social media. And I think if you look on YouTube and podcasts and stuff and wellness and stuff, there's a lot of shitting on social media, rightfully so. There's a lot of downsides and a lot of negatives. But if you use it in a certain way, it can have a lot of benefits.
The tool.
Yeah, use it correctly. It can be a great tool for community and friendships. If you're out there, come join my community. There's if you're a dude out there who has nobody to talk to, and you want to join a solid group of other dudes who are there to just kind of shoot the shit with you and be supportive and be there if you going through things in life, then I'll put a link in the description. I am going to cut off membership at some point. I'm not trying to get the group very big, and my goal is I'm never going to let it become such a large community. We've both been a part of larger Facebook communities where eventually it gets so large that it's unmanageable and it becomes toxic. And I just want to make sure that we keep it small enough to maintain the culture that it has so far. It's positive. You can share freely, but it's not just a bunch of, people just talking shit to each other about every random thing. And I think that that's bound to happen when you get into the thousands and the millions of different people kind of interacting. What are your thoughts? You are a moderator and an admin in that group, so yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that group was at its best when I was an admin.
Oh, no. I'm talking about you're an admin and moderator of my group.
I know. I know.
Oh, well, you fucker. Was that a sarcastic jab? Yes. No, you posted the other day. You engaged. Thank you for doing that as well. I'm trying to build a community. I'm not trying to force it. But it is always nice to get other people who are, creating engagement with them.
So I agree with your vision for the group. I do agree. I do think that you can continue to let it grow, and with proper and appropriate management from us admins, we can continue to hold that vibe even as the group grows. Now, I'm not saying like we want it to be like tens of thousands, but I do think that group can grow to be a pretty decent size and still be what you want it to be.
I think you're right. I get what you're saying. And I guess my point is I'm not necessarily, and I know I've thrown certain numbers out there, which is maybe where I made a mistake. I shouldn't say that I'm going to keep it to a certain number. I'm just saying that whenever I discover what that number is that stops us from being able to maintain what the vision is for the group, then that is when it's going to stop. If that number is 500, then it's 500. If that number is 1,000, then it's 1,000. If that number is 10,000, then it's 10,000. But eventually, I think we've been a part of other groups that were so focused on growth, where that was such of a priority, because it was to stroke somebody's ego, and not necessarily based on providing a quality space, that they missed when it got past that point. I've been a part of groups where the creator and admin of the group literally stopped fucking interacting with the group because they were so oblivious to maintaining the group and its quality that by the time they fucking opened their eyes, it was already a toxic cesspool and they give up on it.
Yeah, they just threw their hands up and are like, I'm out.
And gave up on it. And that's the commitment I'm making, is to never let it get to the point where I'll do that. As long as we can manage it to be the kind of group that we have the vision for, I will let it grow. I won't just arbitrarily be like, hey, this is a great group, but we hit 500, so nobody else. But if I start to see that, there are, toxic kind of fucking arguments going on that nobody's moderating, and, you've got a full-time job, I got a full-time job, we're doing this voluntarily. Or if we get to the point where I need moderators and admins, but I don't know who they are. Like right now, I know who you guys are. I don't want to have to reach out to people that I don't know that I can trust, right? Like I don't want to put admins and moderators in place who I don't know I can count on them, which is what ended up happening in some of the bigger groups that we were part of. All right. So anyway, great conversation. Gonna jump in. We do have some questions, which I was really happy about, because when I had the idea for doing a more casual form of podcast, it wasn't something that crossed my mind. And then I got a question from our first question was actually from my girlfriend. And she asked something and it made me think like, oh shit, yeah, we should have a listener question portion. And then we ended up getting a few questions, even though one of them is from a host. Remember, you posted your question. I was like, dude, this is for potential listeners, not for you. But you're right. It's good to at least create conversation and content. But I'm going to start with your question. I'm going to start with her question.
Yes.
And so this is from Shushma. And so I was bouncing the idea off of her about even starting this group. And then, the conversation eventually led into a discussion of, basically, I noticed that men seem to be more prone to developing deep online relationships and friendships and being involved in communities. That's not to say that women don't utilize social media, but I think we've all seen those, like that meme of these two guys who were like Xbox gamers, 15 years ago, and now they're at each other's daughters' weddings or whatever, right? Or like our case, where like yeah, we were both a part of this random fucking Facebook group over 10 years ago, and now our daughters are best friends, and we visit each other as often as we can. Almost always with those stories that I've seen over the years, it tends to be guys. It tends to be men. And so I asked her, I was like, why might that be? And so she had some interesting thoughts on that. And so at first, we talked in general about why women are a little bit more wary on social media. And a lot of that has to do with men and how men can be, right? Yes. And so she gave some great examples and some great comments about, women have to be a little bit more careful because, you say hi, you say something nice to the wrong dude on the internet, and all of a sudden your phone's being blown up, you're being fucking stalked and doxxed and shit, yes. Right? And that was a great point that she made, and something that I've never experienced, right? And so I can,
but we have seen that in those big groups.
Yeah, we've seen it. Yeah, we've seen it happen. And so I thought that was great. And then so I asked her, okay, so not in general then, but why not even with other women? And so even with other women, there are still even some social differences between men and women that lead to why I may have noticed that kind of tendency for women to not be forming the kind of deep relationships on the internet that I've seen from men in a lot of the communities that we've discussed. And so basically she shared that a lot of it just has to do with their own conditioning on being a little bit more reserved, not because of their own protection. Even from other women, not necessarily from the crazy examples of men. She even gave some examples of, even being friendly to other women can lead to getting sent fucking titty pics. Like, it's not just dick pics. And so women have kind of learned to be a little bit more reserved, in her opinion. And so her question was, with so many of those variables that we discussed, how can a woman sift through the weeds to actually find good people online to make friends with, either male or female? And then she went on to mention that it seems to her, it always amazed her with me, knowing me, how I seem to make friends so quickly. And she's gotten to know all the friendships that I've made via the internet. And it's always, kind of amazed her. And she's curious, as a woman, what advice would you give in order to use online communities and all those other things that we discussed to actually make friends?
That is an excellent question. We have made female friends on the internet, like Melanie, for one. Nora is another one. It would be interesting. So I'm trying to think of how to word it. Like, it would be interesting to know how they did wade through everything to determine like who it is that they really want to attach to and who they didn't want to.
I can tell you, even with those examples, who I know as well, they were much more selective. Like,
yes, and I think that's part of it. Like, you have to be selective. So I know you've seen it as well. There's multiple types of these guys on the internet, particularly when there's a woman involved. You'll have the ones that are just completely disrespectful, and then you'll have the ones that are like white knighting, that are completely fake, but they're trying to make themselves look good because they think they have a chance with this person that's on the other side of the country.
You step in and defend her. Don't you talk to her that way, sir. Please touch my pee-pee.
But I do think you have to be able to have a radar for the people that are being genuine.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I know that that's pretty vague and also very difficult to do.
Very. And not just for women. I've made that mistake too. Connecting with people that I thought, and then you find out, oh shit, okay, this is a snake in the grass. Yeah.
And I'm sure even the girls that we have talked to, I'm sure they've done the same thing. They've probably interacted with people and probably gotten inappropriate pictures sent to them and all of it. So I don't know. That is difficult. I'm not sure it's really all that different than what we do, though. We start to interact, we gauge what that person's interest is, who they are as a person, whether or not we want to continue talking to them. If we decide we want to continue talking to them, I mean, we of course do. And then as you get to know each other, you need to be able to, I don't know, pick out those red flags that women definitely have their ear to more than we do because they just have to.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think we, the online community thing that we've been discussing tonight as well is something that can really help with finding, people who are worth spending your time talking to, and not just random people on the internet. Because even myself, I can't name, even with all the friends that I've met on, through social media, through Facebook, none of them did I meet in like the random comment section of a public post. Like every single one of us has been through smaller private communities that were based around a hobby. And so that would be my advice, especially to women, I think, is, and to Shushma and to anybody else out there, is to find those smaller niche communities where you guys already, because the benefit of those smaller communities is not only one, they're moderated for one, right? In order to start a Facebook group, you have to have an admin, and then that admin can then put in moderators. And so it's not just up to, the AI robot or whatever on Facebook to protect you from toxicity. In those communities, and in Facebook groups, or Reddit has the same thing. Like Reddit has mods. I'm sure any other social media example out there, they're going to have moderators. They're going to have admins who their job, and it's unpaid, so whether or not they're good at their job, varies, but their job is to protect the group and the community from those really extreme examples of the stalkers and the harassers and all of that. And so I would say that that's really, if you're going to make connections with people through social media or the internet, it's going to be in smaller, more niche groups focused on a hobby. So if you're thinking like, man, I could really use some people to talk to, well, what are you into? I don't know, underwater basket weaving. Fucking do a search on, your favorite site, Reddit, Facebook, whatever it is, for, groups or what is it called on Reddit? Like, is that like threads?
Man, I would steer clear of Reddit. I don't know.
Well, I'm just trying to not have this be a conversation about fucking Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm meant for it to be a conversation.
You could do it on Instagram.
Whatever your social media thing is, I guarantee you there's a niche for it, community, version or section of it. Go look up something that you're into. I love underwater basket weaving. All right, I guarantee you there's an underwater basket weaving Facebook group. I love crocheting. I guarantee you there's a group for that. I love Christmas. I guarantee you there's a group for that. There are so many groups out there for such weird shit. Even if you're into weird shit, right? You might be into some weird shit. There's a group out there for you. I guarantee you. You like feet pics or something? There's probably a group out there. I don't know. But you get my point. I'm saying there is we got a surprise late guest into the show. Brian, I saw you comment on the YouTube live chat. Thank you for joining, man. That was a surprise. Sure. How you doing?
Oh, doing all right, man. Had to take a break from some of my own editing, so I figured I saw you guys still going. Figured I'd hop on, say hello.
I'm glad you did. And for everybody else out there, moving forward, this is episode 1. I've got a group of great individuals who I've invited to be a part of these episodes on this show. And this is a perfect example of kind of what I meant for all of us is, when I say we're doing something, jump in at any time, and we'd love to have you join in. We were just talking about, we were answering questions. I don't know what point you were up to with your watching before you joined.
I've been following along for probably about 10-20 minutes now. I think maybe the last 5 minutes I've been blank, but
All right, so in the last 5 minutes, basically, we got into the questions, and we had a great question about, online communities and making friends on the internet. And we had a question from Shushma, and she asked about, how women in particular can find connections and friendships on the internet and through social media, with it in mind that they face a lot more challenges and difficulties and danger with being open and social on the internet. And so we gave some examples of how it can go negative, and then we're trying to give some advice on how to find the positive and form the connections and friendships like we have.
Well, I think it's the same way that guys do. It's just finding that right niche group to be a part of, where, most of us met through gaming groups, and, I think we all met in the same gaming group.
Yeah.
But, not saying women can't, obviously, video games are awesome, but it's just finding that right group. And unfortunately, with the online culture, there is that, I don't want to call him a neck beard, but a neck beard. Yeah. The guy who's going to see a girl and start, no
DMing. Offense to all the awesome dudes out there who just unfortunately happen to grow beards on their neck.
Okay, there's a difference from having a neck beard and being a neck beard. If you intentionally let it grow, never wash your hair, and try to cover it up with a fedora, my guy, you might want to rethink a couple things.
Yeah. And just also, saying. Even if you can't grow a beard, depending on your behaviors, you might be a neck beard.
Yeah, for sure. I've known a lot of clean-shaven neck beards.
Oh, man.
But no, unfortunately, women, guys, we don't really have to worry about getting pictures of an Oscar Mayer in our DMs too often.
A lot of guys would, from the opposite sex would welcome it. They wouldn't.
True.
They're hoping.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, but unsolicited genitalia pics in general, I don't think anyone much cares for.
And usually unsolicited genitalia pics of any type are not the prettiest things anyway. The kinds of people who send unsolicited genitalia do not have very good looking genitalia.
There's a reason pornography stars are professional. All right. They see the right waxers and trainers and things of that nature. You got your cameras set up just right, your softbox light over here, your key light over here. It's just how it works. Okay, you trying to do it in the bathroom.
Clearly, I need up my lighting game.
I'll tell you, dude. I've been shown some of the shit that women get sent to them throughout the years, and I strive to have the level of confidence of the men I've seen with their micro dick sending unsolicited. Like, dude, you had the confidence to send that? I strive for that level of confidence.
Man, I still don't even like seeing my own. I ain't gonna send it to somebody else, Fuck.
I don't think it's confidence. I think it's complete obliviousness.
Yeah, of course I know. Yeah. It's absolutely not confidence, because they won't fucking even go near anybody with any level of confidence in the real world. But yeah, no, anyway, it's always boggled my mind. Like, you sent that? Like, what did you think?
It's pretty incredible.
You were gonna get any reaction but a laugh? Like, dude, like, give yourself a chance. Send a picture of your face at least. Like, Jesus. Anyway,
has Jen ever said anything about how she's had to navigate Facebook groups and things like that?
No, I was gonna mention Jen. By the way, to your point, Brian, when you're talking about game groups, it does tend to be guys, but yes, we all have examples, including your wife, of a few women who have, been a part of those groups for years and have formed friendships. I consider Jen a friend as well. Yep. And we have a few females who have been friends. But go ahead, Jesse.
Well, I was just curious if Jen had mentioned or talked about her experience in kind of these groups and whether or not they've been positive, negative, things of that nature.
She's made a lot of close friends, especially in like video game and other nerd culture groups. I think that's one nice thing about a lot of the communities for these niche groups is they tend to be very protective. Like the Comic-Con culture has gotten a lot better over the years. Cosplay culture has become way less what's the word I'm looking for? Objectification and more like actual care for the
It
craft.
has? Like, that's a genuine question.
It
I
really,
see what he's saying. It like it used to be like, at least now you can recognize that, it's supposed to be a specific character.
well, not just
And
that
that's
too,
an improvement from before.
but there's a
It was
lot
just
of
like,
people
wait,
that
who are you
will,
supposed to be?
you look at somebody dressed as Xena Warrior Princess, and you're not just going to go, oh my God, her legs are awesome. Is most of the comments are like, holy shit, how'd you get the texture right on the fucking skirt thing? Or, where'd you get this made? How'd you do this? So it's,
And yeah, they still do hype up the sexuality, which, by the way, my personal opinion, I don't see a problem with that. Yeah, like, yeah.
the human body is the human body. You want to show your butthole online, go for it.
And yes,
You know.
if you want to show me a sexy Master Chief, I'm down. Like,
Yeah, I mean, shit, I ain't gonna say no. Fucking play, you gotta play. Do what you need to do.
Whoops. All right, apparently I'm not allowed to see a sexy Master Chief.
Oh.
I'm scrolling on the internet. I got one of these. Oh man. But no, I do think, and Brian, it's interesting. Your answer to Jesse's question is right in line with kind of where we were right before you joined, which was I was talking about why, as a female, if you're interested in maybe looking into finding friends and connections via social media and the internet, it's so important and so much more useful to find those smaller niche communities because they are moderated and they are protected. And so you were talking about that protection within like the cosplay community or whatever. And yeah, same thing goes in our smaller communities that we're a part of. If we can give each other shit. Some outsider comes in and starts being weird to one of the females in our little team, they're gonna get destroyed, right? And they're gonna be kicked out because we have moderation, or they're gonna be ridiculed and shamed because that's a smaller, tight-knit community. And
honestly, that's the best option. The over moderation of just instantly banning people, I think, has kind of created, I'm not going to go with the whole like cancel culture thing, but a way to just kind of block out that element, which causes them to become more further isolated, more insular, and just a tighter echo chamber. So they start thinking that they're always the victims and they're always, in the right. Mocking them and pushing back on their shitty statements, I think, is way more efficient than just go away. It's easier to say
that's
go
natural
away.
consequences.
That is really a great point. Because you're
and
right.
It's way more fun to mock them until they cry.
I honestly, I stopped. There was a while there where I stopped interacting so much, even in on some of the online communities that we're all a part of, because Facebook was trying to fix a problem, and they ended up making a problem while doing it, where there's this higher level, I don't know if it's a human or it's a robot or an algorithm, but like where we started getting flagged and banned for shit.
Nothing.
Where like it was me and you giving each other shit, and we loved it. Like we were having fun. It was completely and they've ruined communities for a while there. It seems to have backed off a bit on Facebook.
Well, that was, I think some of that had to do with the fact that they were getting, subpoenaed to Congress twice a month for, we got to moderate it because children. And then you had all the corporate interests that are like, we don't want our ads anywhere near any of this kind of talk. And they overcorrected. They, just knee-jerk reaction into, okay, none of this talk is allowed whatsoever. And then they saw, participation and engagement drop dramatically.
Yeah, because dark humor is how people bond sometimes. Like
that's my whole online experience.
Yeah, that's your whole fucking persona. Like,
Yeah.
I've got entire relationships based on talking shit to each other.
Exactly.
Telling each other the most horrible shit, but it's our entire relationship, and I love it. And so did they back off? Because they seem to, and I didn't know if it was, did I get less toxic, or did they fucking stop being such bitches?
Well, I think maybe it's a bit of that Pavlov's response. You get banned so many times, you're like, all right, fuck it, I won't make the dead baby joke this time. I'll go a different direction. But it does honestly seem like they backed off a little bit. At least
I agree, because there was a stint there where I was getting banned like monthly.
Oh yeah.
for like the silliest shit. Like,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't even, and then I would behave, and then I'd get banned for something from 3 years ago out of nowhere. And I'm like, what the?
Well, like me, Jen, and Gaston would talk so much crap to each other that one of us was getting banned almost daily, at least a 24 to 72 hour ban. That eventually it's like, okay, we'll just do the private group. We'll talk all our shit there. We'll just throw out little inside jokes in group that other people might pick up on. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I do think it was a funny time, but we were just talking about kind of the benefits and everything. And I think, again, just to kind of wrap up for you, Shishma, specifically for that question, if you, and not just for her, but for anybody out there, if you are somebody who doesn't have access to real world social connections for whatever reason, be it by choice or, inability, social media can have its benefits. You can make good friends, as you can see, who are now my fellow podcast hosts, and who used to be random denizens of the internet,
Yep.
Years ago on Facebook. You can, but again, go out, seek the smaller communities, find a well-regulated, well-moderated community. I would say avoid the very, very large ones. If you see, tens of thousands as the membership base
Good
or whatever,
fucking
I would really say start with like a group with 100, 200, less than 500.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Because even within that 500, probably only like 30 are going to be active. Like you wouldn't believe, like it's only going to be like 10% of any size group that's actually regularly active. So find a small size. What's up?
Another useful tip, I think, is that if you happen to know somebody who's already into the same thing that you're into or has an online presence already, kind of piggybacking on them can kind of give you an entry also. So like in this very specific instance where it's Shishma asking, she's got you who has a very deep online network, kind of like a built-in online network of good people. That's
a great point. I could introduce her to others. Hey, I could send be like, hey, reach out to my friend Nora or Jen or Melanie. Yeah, I could. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, shit. Now you're gonna get me in trouble. She's gonna be like, why haven't you done that already?
But speaking as somebody who has social anxiety and it's taken them a long time to get out of my own personal self-hatred and be able to get out into an online community and be more social, things like that. It's hard to ask somebody, especially if they do have an online presence, like, not saying that's a bad idea at all, but it's hard to be like, hey, do you know somebody who's into Doctor Who fan fiction? Because you're afraid of being judged for that. But if you're into Doctor Who fan fiction, do what you need to do, man. Fucking find someone who wrote some, Reddit, Facebook, wherever, and just comment, great fucking story, bro. And then find another one, great fucking story. Or that was the worst thing I've ever read in my goddamn life. I want to puncture my eyes with a fork. Just something, And then eventually someone might message you and be like, that was a great fucking comment. I totally agree. Let's talk. And then you're going to be awkward as hell talking to them for a while, but you'll get over it.
So I don't know if you were here for my example. I love that you gave your Doctor Who fan fiction. Was that what it was? My example was foot fetishes. But the point being, get very niche. What are you into?
Each
super niche. I guarantee you, there's a group out there for it.
Oh yeah.
All right, wonderful. So on to the next question. This comes from our very own co-host. And so Jesse, when I posted in our private men's group for any questions from listeners, he decided, fuck that, I'm going to post my own question.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
I like it. You could have just asked it. You're going to be on the show. You didn't need to ask it in the comments here. You could just bring it up on the show when we're live later. But
I do what I want.
Yeah.
Make sure that question gets asked.
Yeah, but he was trying to make sure that I got at least a question. So I appreciate it, Jesse. Thank you, buddy. Jesse asked, Why are breakups, and I'm going to let you two have this discussion, actually. I got to take a quick break. So I'll be off camera. Why are breakups harder on men than women? Why are men more codependent on women? And are those two questions even reality, or is that just a social construct?
I don't know about the breakups thing. I know me personally, I've had some pretty rough ones, but I don't know if it's necessarily true for everyone, because I've had a lot of female friends and watched them go to some very, very dark places because of a breakup. I think it all comes down to the circumstance. As far as codependency goes, I think it's the social stigma. I think, men have been taught that through media and all those kinds of stereotypes that we're supposed to be the dumb, like extra child in the house. So a lot of men,
babysitter.
Yeah. So a lot of men start playing into that role. So the woman takes on, the responsibility of paying the bills, keeping the house up. And then when they get freaking tired of it because the guy's not carrying his weight, they're left trying to rebuild something from nothing. At least that would be my 2 cents on it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think when I asked that question, it was a pretty anecdotal, because from my experience, it always seems like for men a breakup can last like in some instances it feels like years. They can drag that on, where it seems like women, again, and just in my experience, seem to just get over it. Like, I'm not saying like it's like the next day they're over it, but it seems like over the next couple of months they're like fine, and maybe even in another relationship.
That might play a part of it. It might be the fact that, and I'm not saying it's true for every case, but generally women have more opportunities to find someone to go to dinner with than guys do. It seems like it's an easier for a woman to get a date than a man to ask a woman out. I mean, that's coming from a dude with social anxiety, so it's hard to judge what every guy's experience is.
Women should just ask men out also.
That would be awesome. To be fair, my wife did ask me to marry her years before I actually asked her to marry me, so that helped.
Yeah, that works out. See, it works out. Yeah, I was more just kind of wondering if those anecdotal experiences that I was kind of seeing were a reflection of reality, or if it was more just like men aren't actually more codependent than women. Like, men don't need women more than women need men. We actually really do need each other.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's that balance. But I think it's also a lot of how the media portrays it and just the social stigmas. You had a patriarchy that ran for so long, and then you had the feminist movement that came up, then you had the neo-feminism, and then the ultra-masculine movements that are pushing back and forth to each other. So at this point, it's just kind of like, listen, we're all fucking ruined people. Can we just make it work?
Basically, yeah. It actually is kind of crazy. The pendulum is swinging in ways that I don't know if history has ever seen it before.
It's funny. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Glenn Beck at all.
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure what your opinion is on him. Mine's not extremely high. But years ago, I used to be a huge fan of his. And he had mentioned in one of his books that exact pendulum theory, how politically and socially, our country swings from the left to the right every so often.
Well, it always used to. It did always used to.
And he said, and I mean, this was probably back in like 2008, 2010, that it was swinging so far to the left and the right that it was eventually just going to come off the hinges. And it's like, well, it definitely has come off the hinges, and now the whole fucking clock is just getting ready to fall over.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point, it's not really swinging anymore. It's just expanding in the two different directions now.
Yeah, it's like the stick before the ball thing. I don't know. I'm sure there's a term for it. Has become a rubber rope. It's just swinging one side to the other.
All right. So I'm back. I was listening in on you guys. I agree with a lot of it. I think Brian, the theory that you posited, and then Jesse, you also kind of backed it up. I think that really nails it. Is as somebody who, in very recent past few years had done a lot of dating, I don't necessarily think that I think you guys hit the nail on the head. It's not necessarily that breakups are any harder on men than they are on women. And I don't think it's necessarily that men are any more codependent. And I also don't think it's to their benefit but it is that women can get into a new relationship more easily than a man in general. And I do want to point out, I don't think that that's necessarily to their benefit, because I do think that they're, especially through a difficult breakup, where there's a lot of trauma and all these other very deep things that it affects inside of you. Moving on to the next relationship is a Band-Aid. And eventually, that Band-Aid is gonna burst and the wound is not gonna be able to heal. And so honestly, the fact that they can replace the last one so quickly can lead a lot of women down the case where, they never end up processing and healing from a relationship from 15 years ago, because they've had a new guy every month, where guys, like, we can end up healing, but it's not necessarily by choice, but it's because, well, fuck. All right, I guess I have no other choice because I'm lonely, I'm sad, and I can't find anybody else to be with. So fuck it. And I guess I gotta heal.
So shout out to Shishma. She commented on the YouTube channel. She makes a really good point, actually, that women tend to get their emotional stuff out during the breakup. So they get their release out when it's all happening.
Well,
and then that's a fair point. Yeah, then they're able to kind of like move on after that, where men tend to do that post relationship.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that.
And that's because for a lot of men, myself included, and not, I wouldn't even say the distant past, the recent past. Even if we get our emotions out, we're usually getting it out, but it's being translated into something that it's really not. Like, I can't tell, even to this day, man, I'm not going to say I'm completely past it. It's a work in progress every day. It's very common for men to turn sadness into anger, for men to turn emotions from one thing into another thing. And I can't tell now I finally got better at recognizing it. I'll give myself that pat on the back, where I will catch myself after I finally calm down. But I can't tell you, it's so easy for guys to turn sadness into anger. And we don't even fucking realize that. I know for me, I'm so guilty of that, where I've let out some vitriol and some anger that I didn't realize was really sadness, hurt, and vulnerability that I didn't know how to identify. And so I didn't know how to fucking deal with it. And the only way that I knew to let it out, or I didn't let it out, the only way it could come out, because it's going to come out. If you don't let it out, it's going to come out. There is no just suppress it. It will come out. And for a lot of guys, when it does come out, the form it's going to take is anger and potentially even violence. Unfortunately, in some of the more extreme cases.
Well, I mean, you look at statistically, men do process depression. It is exhibited as anger, rage, and violent tendencies, which, I mean, probably says a lot to the whole masculine culture and the idea that men don't cry. But that's something men need to learn to get over. Just cry it out. You're going to sleep well that night.
Seriously, it's true.
You know, I will say that, as somebody who used to, again, exhibit sadness and trauma through anger and some very toxic behaviors, that's also easier said than done. And so that's where, I would say, seek out help and therapy.
Oh, for sure. I didn't mean at all to
And I'm not saying
I've struggled with it my whole life too. I was diagnosed with a rage disorder at one point and smashed a mirror over my head during a minor argument. Not proud, but it did happen.
Yeah. Hey, I've had holes in the wall. I've been there. I've been that, and I think that there are a lot of guys out there who, whether or not they're willing to admit it, understand what that feels like to let that rage out when it was really trauma and sadness. But if you're not taught how to identify it, man, there are a lot of men out there who it's really just sadness and trauma, but they don't fucking know how to just cry. Like, just cry, just let it out and cry. Like they don't like.
It's not easy. It's a muscle you have to learn to develop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really for me, it took somebody encouraging me to in a safe space and somebody I trusted, and that's where again, if you are one of those types, definitely I would say seek out some kind of professional help to help you develop that muscle. I'll end this question so we can move on to the last one and end this end the show on a happier ending. I would want to point out though that we did get an additional comment from Shushma pointing out that even some of the things we described, it does happen with women, angry outbursts and this and that. As men, and I think that's a great point that she makes, and I'm happy to say that. Yeah, it's a women thing too. As men though, especially I'm a 6'3", unfortunate God, I don't even want to share it. 280 something pound by guy. I
got 100 pounds on you. Don't feel bad.
Okay. All right. Cool. I'm working on it.
Yeah, I'm heavier than you. Also.
Like a couple of months ago, that number was about 20 pounds higher. So, but in my case, and I'm not saying that, but in general, I can cause a lot more damage by not processing my emotions in a healthy way. I have the potential to cause more damage than most, and especially most women. And so for men, it's a double-edged sword where it sucks. I hate that it's the truth that there is more of a responsibility on us as men in general to be able to learn how to control that shit because of the potential that we have to hurt others.
It's emotionally pulling your punches.
Yeah.
You have to emotionally pull your punches because unfortunately, and yeah, I'm about the same size. I'm 6'3", and you don't realize how intimidating you are most of the time.
How scary I forget how scary I can be.
Yeah,
I'm a fucking teddy bear child crying a lot of times.
Yeah,
I forget how scary I can be when I'm in a bad space.
Well, then I've got this face going where I always look like I'm going to strangle somebody, so it doesn't help my case much. But you forget, and then you try to let the emotions out, and even when you are trying to express sadness or frustration or anxiety, people see it when you're already big and intimidating as anger, scary, fear. So you have to start.
Trust me, I know that deeply. I've quite literally had the cops call on me just by talking. So,
oh man,
yeah.
Luckily,
you're loud like me. I can't tell you. My entire life, I've been told like you're yelling. Like, please stop screaming.
Like, no, I'm not. I'm literally just talking.
I'm telling you, I am not yelling. I can show you when I'm yelling. I can show you.
If I were yelling,
but
the fucking neighborhood would hear me. So,
yeah,
what you don't know is what you think is my regular voice is the whisper that I've learned to turn into my regular voice.
The bad thing is that such a cliche phrase is "I'm not yelling." You'll know when I'm yelling. And it's like shit. All right,
it's cliche, but it's all because in a lot of cases it is true. And that's where I was getting at. And I'm not trying to say, "Oh, boohoo, man," like or whatever. But I will say, addressing kind of this topic, I want society to understand that there is a level of imbalance and unfairness when it comes to a man that. They're like, oh, express your emotions. But women, I've met women who can scream at the top of their lungs, who can do all the things that I want to do and that I have done, and they don't suffer the same consequences because it's not threatening when they do it.
Can you imagine if a man went and slit a girl's tires or
but we joke about it even in our men's group. right? Where it's like, oh, that crazy bit, whatever. If the roles were reversed in a lot of cases, yeah, it's like, oh, that motherfucker needs to be in jail right now in the handcuffs. And again, I'm not saying some of it's not justified. We're all nerds. With great power comes great responsibility. So yeah, if you're big, you're scary, and you're powerful. The downside is that you have to deal with the consequences and the responsibility of what that means. And on the flip side, guess what? You can walk down a dark alley. I can walk down any dark alley I want to on any night and any day of the week and not worry about being harassed or being bothered by.
Yeah, it's kind of funny on that very specific topic. I'll go out with my girlfriend and she'll be like, can we take a different route? And I'm like, we don't need to worry about going this route.
Yeah,
nothing's going to happen.
Oh yeah, and
like as a guy, the most you're worried about is somebody coming up and be like, hey, do you have $1? Or do you have a cigarette?
I mean, I'll be honest, dude. There are nights when I am in a bad mood. I'm walking down a certain street like I wish a motherfucker would. Like, please come fuck with me. I'm in a bad mood and I'd love to punch something. Please.
I used to be that way, but
just
man,
fucking try it.
I've gotten so old and sore now. I'm gonna go get my CCW just so I can, or concealed carry, just because I'm too old to fight. I'm going Indiana Jones with that now. Yeah, fucking swing your sword around. Boom. All right, it's over.
No, I'll be honest, dude. I grew up. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's not necessarily something I'm proud of, but it's the truth. Like, I grew up in an area with a very violent. Like, I had my first fight when I was like 4. I was jumped in like the 3rd grade. Fist fights were a daily occurrence. I got speared in Goldberg in 8th grade by one of my who ended up being one of my best friends. I don't have a best friend from childhood who I have not punched in the face or been punched in the face by.
That's a weird thing for guys too. Is I've had a couple friends like that where at one point in your life you were bitter fucking enemies and you fought like dogs, and then one day it's just like, oh, you like that thing? I like that thing too. All right, I don't hate you anymore. Let's hang out.
Well, I can tell you where that comes from is as a youth, especially when I had a lot of those fights and those friends that I'm mentioning, the fight ends up happening because of this puffing of the chest and this bravado and this false version of yourself. But here's the interesting thing about fights, which is why I'm not talking about these things as if I regret them. I actually like that they happened. What you recognize is after you fight somebody and you let it all out, the real you is all that's left.
Yeah.
When the punching is done, you're exhausted. He got his ass beat or you got your ass beat. You're both done and you're exhausted. Then it's just the real you left. And then it's like, oh, okay, like actually we get along. And that's what ended up happening in a lot of the cases. Like all that bravado and the puffing of the chest got let out through the punches. And then afterwards we were able to actually understand each other. Because the real us was exposed after the punches. And
I wish that happened more often.
Don't go in the street.
I wish that happened more often to me too. That has been very rare for me.
Yeah, I've had a couple experiences like that, but most of the time it's been at the bus station getting the shit kicked out of me, laying on the ground until a bus shows up and they call the cops.
So I will say the example.
Hey, there's a little fat boy on the ground here bleeding. You might want to do something.
Yeah, help.
The examples that I would have for what I'm describing were in 2 situations where you had no choice but to continue to interact with that person. One was in grade school, and so you're going to spend the rest of the school year together. It doesn't matter that you just punch each other. You're going to still see this person tomorrow.
I don't know, man. I got in fights in grade school and had to see that person every day, and still was not friends with them.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's always going to happen, but I'm saying the examples that I said of the friends that I do have. That's why. Yeah. And then the other was in the Army. So you were stuck with these people.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the Army is different.
The whole military culture, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah. And so my encouragement, I'm not encouraging going out and getting into a street fight, but I do think that there is a value to letting out that kind of aggression.
Actually, I think it almost is a thing that boys need to do. They need to get into a fight.
I said not a street fight. That's why my suggestion was going to be like martial arts or something like that. Where
you need no. There's too many rules. You need that sense of danger.
You guys are not about to encourage our audience to go into a street fight.
All right, what you do, you find an alley behind an
episode 1 where
that still has a functional.
I don't know. I know that both of my kids got in fights when they were in high school or younger, and it was nothing but good for them.
I do agree. We have a generation right now that's being raised that really, really missed out on being what it feels like to be punched in the face.
Yes.
There's a large part of society right now that
Could
would
use a
have
good crack in the
been a lot
nose.
better citizens had they been punched in the face at some point in their life, but they don't know what it's like to have to shut your mouth at some point. 'cause you might get harassed.
Yeah, a broken eye socket will teach you your limits a lot quicker than being banned on Twitter.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh man. All right. Anyway, moving on. Before we encourage everybody to go beat the shit out of your neighbor. You want to make a friend? Go beat the shit out of your neighbor.
Just saying, the hockey punch, shirt over the head, twice to the gut. You know, it's a solid maneuver.
All right. Anyway, so last, it wasn't really a question. This was actually shared by a member of our men's group that I've mentioned, Brian, by the way, also a admin of our men's group. And so thank you both for what you do with that. We have a member, Rob. Rob happens to be a good friend of ours online. Another one met through video games and that community years and years and years ago. I've known Rob for a very long time, and so has Jesse. And so Rob shared this, and I'll go ahead and just read it word for word as he said. From Rob, I'll share something rather personal that has always meant the world to me. My friendship with Jesse White. We became friends over a decade ago when we both shared our passion for video games in a podcast called Podcast Unlocked IGN Facebook group. So one of those video gaming Facebook groups that we've discussed throughout this conversation. Back to what Rob's saying. He barely knew me, but we immediately connected, and it was during one of my lowest moments. I was in the hospital for over a week with an incredibly scary diagnosis looming. It turned out to be nothing of extreme merit. However, Jesse talked to me every day for hours and constantly lifted my spirits. I'll never, ever forget that extreme kindness and compassion he shared. To a guy he was just barely getting to know. I know online relationships get a bad rep often, and sometimes rightfully so. However, I consider Jesse to be one of my closest and dearest friends, and I'm forever grateful that online communities exist. Much love to you, buddy. And again, thanks, John, for having this group for dudes. Well, thank you, Rob, for one. So appreciate such a thoughtful comment and such a thoughtful story, and absolutely appreciate, shit. Jesus, am I about to get emotional?
Yeah, someone's cutting onions in my living room here.
Cutting onions over there. So yeah, whatever. My dog farted. Appreciate you saying what you did about the group, dude. It's a small community. We're newer and all of that, but I'm just I'm trying to make a difference, and it's nice to hear that. But anyway, to you, Jesse, while I fucking compose myself. Jesus Christ.
It was directed at me, you asshole.
I know, and I'm giving you a chance to process.
I think I responded to that, but basically, Rob is easily one of my best friends. To his point, he was there for me. We met basically while I was in the midst of going through a divorce. He was there for me when my son almost died. Rob is very, very special to me. Our friendship is very special. So, yeah, I echo everything that he said. He's a remarkable person, a remarkable friend. And even though I've never actually met him face to face, he's closer to me than most people I've ever actually. He's closer to me than anybody I've ever actually met in my real day-to-day life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would 100% agree. Rob is an amazing dude. I've also been friends with him for so many years. And it's funny because when he posted this, and then we've had these discussions, and he specifically talks about online relationships sometimes getting a bad rep. And it brings up a funny story because I didn't know that's how you and Rob really connected early on. I came into the group dynamic after, I guess, that had all went down. And but I always noticed that you two were particularly close, and you haven't met in person. I've actually met both of you on separate occasions in person. And Rob actually has the distinction of being the first internet friend that I ever met in person. And I've got a funny story about the bad rep thing. So this was around 2015, 2014. And we had all been in the groups for, maybe a year or two together in those groups. And Rob happened to be one of the, people that we, interacted with. And I always thought he was a cool dude. And there was another dude, Matt, who I'm no longer connected or, friendly with or talk with. But that's my fault because I did some dumb, fuck that relationship up years ago in one of my work sadder moments. But back to, the story. I went out to New Jersey. I was living in Texas at the time, but I was from Jersey. Rob happens to live in Jersey. And then the other dude, Matt, lives near there in Philly. And I was flying out. My grandfather was in the hospital. My grandfather, who I just made a post recently, I lost him, about a year ago. And he was in the hospital at the time. This was over, almost 10 years ago. He was in the hospital. He was going to go in for heart surgery. And I flew out to be with him because we, didn't know how it was going to turn out. And I posted it in one of our Facebook groups, in one of the video game groups or whatever, or maybe he saw it on my regular timeline. And at some point they reached out or I reached out and it was like, hey, you want to, grab drinks or dinner while you're out here or whatever? I was like, hell yeah. And so I flew to Jersey and I was staying with my friend, I call him my brother, Jesse, you know him, Chris.
Yes.
I was staying with Chris, my brother. And so anyway, I had, Chris is one of my closest friends from growing up. There's a reason I call him my brother. And I was staying with him. I had the whole trip planned and all of that. And then one night I had told Chris, I was like, hey, I'm going to go out and meet some friends tonight. And Chris looks at me and he's like, wait, where are you going? I was like, I'm just going to go meet some friends. He was like, what friends? Because Chris and me we're so close and we've known each other for so long that his friends are my friends. I didn't have friends that he didn't know. And so he was like, what friends are you even talking about? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, just some. Oh, okay. I awkwardly and ashamedly, I was like, just some dudes I know. And he's like, how the hell you know him? I was like, it's just some dudes I know from Facebook. And he's like, from Facebook? I was like, yeah, it's video game group and blah, blah, blah. And he looked at me and he just, back then we had our ways of giving each other shit. And he goes, gay? Because to him and back then, that sounded very fucking weird. Like, wait, you're meeting some dudes that you know from the internet was basically and I was like, yeah, whatever. I finally admitted. I was like, yes, I'm gonna. And I got made fun of. He roasted me a little bit and whatever, right? I drove down.
You can't do that anymore.
What's that?
I said he can't roast you for that anymore.
Well, now it's become.
He literally came up to Maine.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so I go down and yeah, so years later, obviously, yeah, now he's friends with all of my online friends. He's taking trips up to Maine to meet Jesse. But I go down, I meet Rob. I had dinner with Rob and Matt, and it was a wonderful time and such a great experience. And since then, that was the inaugural experience. Every time I've had an opportunity to fly somewhere, I've always tried to think of, who lives in this area that's part of these gaming communities and these Facebook communities that I've known for years and years and years, that maybe I can meet. And since then I've met, God, I don't want to try and remember all the names now, but many, many people. I was a part of a beer group from Europe. I had a guy who was visiting Austin for some work shit from England, and we only knew each other from a beer group across the seas, and we had drinks together at a local brewery. And so
that sounded like a pretty cool story, actually.
Yeah. He owned his own brewery. I got some swag from it and all of that. I've been out after that. I've been out to meet Jesse twice. Our daughters have met. And so Rob, that experience with you and going out there and meeting you was the first time I ever did. And it was the first proof that these online relationships, these online friendships, they can transform and turn into legitimate, real friendships. And to this day, those people that I went out and met, Jesse, you're included in this. Brian, you're included in this. You guys are ever in my area, you've got somebody to call who has your back. You got somebody to go have a beer with. You got somebody to come hang out with, or whatever the case may be. So to the audience and on the topic that we've discussed tonight, don't discount the power of online communities and online friendships, as long as you use it correctly and go about it the right way.
It's a great stepping stone to be able to get yourself out there and get more social with other people, because it's not always the easiest to do.
Yeah, and yeah, Brian, you did mention it earlier, but I think you were a great example with the social anxiety and stuff. If you've got such a heart, like it's a great way. And you weren't here for an earlier conversation, Brian, but we talked about how you can pretend to be somebody you're not on the internet, and you can also be you can be a real version of you that you don't feel comfortable sharing in real life. And so if you do struggle with meeting people in real life, the internet can be a good tool for you, because you can go maybe pretend to be a little bit more confident than you really are. And, eventually you'll find some people, if you find these communities, where you can really open up and be the real you and make a real friend in the world.
Just don't become a tryhard.
Don't become a tryhard. Yeah. There's nuance.
I do want to give a shout out to Chuck Carroll, who I think we're all familiar with here in this circle. And Alan Heinen,
fellow veteran. I love Chuck. Yeah.
Yes, and Alan Heinen and Jessica Clark. I don't know if you guys all know her also. Yeah. So when I went out to California, my son was in the hospital, and I wasn't sure if he was going to live. Right. I went out to California to visit with him, and that was an opportunity to meet up with Chuck and Alan and Jessica while I was out there, and it was honestly exactly what I needed. Chuck is one of very, very few people that I've ever met in my life that can actually make me feel short.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember you finally met somebody tall, which you were to me. I remember meeting you like, fuck, I don't have to look up very often.
Yeah, he's got a solid inch on me, and I'm just not used to that.
Okay, so what I'm figuring out here is we need to get some shorter members, because it sounds like all three of us are decently tall as it is.
Well, or more so every conversation, if you meet somebody that you've known for years on the internet, be prepared for a surprise at either how short they are compared to you or how tall they are.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's almost the first thing we all, because right here, we're all equal.
Yeah. I'm actually the shortest if you look at the video.
I can turn myself into the tallest right now. I mean, shit, all I had to do was hit a left. Now you think I'm taller than you. I could be 4 foot tall.
But anyway, I want to give a shout out to them. I met Jessica not with Chuck and Alan, and to her credit, I think she may have been a little freaked out meeting a random dude from the internet.
Again, going back to
I get it.
Women and men. Yeah.
But we're still friends on Facebook, and we hung out and had a couple drinks together, and then that was it. But Chuck and Alan and we got fucking roasted.
I actually do remember that. Yeah, I remember the pictures, and you were very red.
I was fucking hammered. To the point where I don't necessarily even remember getting back to my hotel room. I was fucking hammered.
Yeah, hey, me and you've been there too, man. We did our first trip together was when I came out to visit was a brewery tour, and there were some shenanigans and many drinks to be had.
I'll never forget us filling up that Uber.
Yeah. Oh, dude, we it was a group of us from a beer group, and like the Uber that we ordered was too small. It could only fit 3 of us. But the dude, he wouldn't let one of us sit in the front, was it? Or did we have already?
Well, I sat in the front.
You sat in the front, but then still the rest of us couldn't fit in the back. So our buddy Mark, another dude from our online beer group, laid across the 3 of us.
Credit to the Uber driver for letting us do that.
And he let us do it. And oh God, we got very close. So I love it. I love the examples. Again, I do think that these friendships matter. And here's an example. A perfect example is this is our first episode of an ongoing show that we're going to be having called Guys Night. We're going to be discussing all kinds of topics like this, random topics. We may talk about anything. We'll always try and have something that we're going to focus on and have a deep discussion about. But if you've watched this long, thank you. If you were one of the ones who left us any comments, big shout out to you, Shushma. Big shout out to, I'm not sure if they're still there. We had Isaac Gonzalez on Facebook. mentioned that their birthday may be next Friday. So if you are still there,
Happy birthday.
Sorry, it took me a while to address that. We were deep in conversation, but happy birthday to you. And thank you to both of you for joining. If you are out there and you're watching, please feel free to subscribe. We are going to go live here on this channel for future episodes. I'm not going to set a schedule yet. We're going to do it when, when we come up with a topic and we can all coordinate getting together, because we all have full-time jobs and lives that we also follow. And if you do have a comment that you would like, or a question that you would like answered on the next episode, please feel free to leave it in the comments. Also, I will share a link, as I said, to our men's group, private men's group. Feel free to join, and you can get a chance to hang out with all of us on a daily basis. With that said, I know I just spit a lot out there. For you two gentlemen, if you want to say anything before I go ahead and sign off, Brian, I know you've got your own great creative channel. If you wouldn't mind telling everybody where they can find more of you and your awesome creations.
Sure. If you're into the darker parts of humanity, society, true crime, cryptids, hauntings, anything like that, you can find me on YouTube at Sick and Awful. I'm also at Twitter, Facebook, all the social medias, Sick and Awful, one word. Right now I'm working on an episode about pediophilia, or pediophobia, which is the fear of inanimate objects, which
that's very similar to another thing that
that's what I was wondering.
That I might have to censor. Even I have to leave that out just so our video is even.
Okay, let's call it automatonophobia.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I know, pediophobia. I think that's why they changed the name of it, because it sounds a little worse than it actually is. Too close, yeah. One is focusing more on.
Brian, all right, you're going into the dark.
No, maybe if I ever set up a Patreon, I'll do like Pedophile Island in Washington, stuff like that. But
all right, Mark,
I'm not quite there yet.
That part, by the way.
Sorry, I'm bad at self-censoring. That's why I don't do lives.
Oh, dude.
I'll send you a good duck sound you can just put over that.
All right, you got it. By the way, Shushma, who's been watching with us, she did mention, Brian, I introduced her to your channel. She loves your shows.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and so keep doing what you're doing, dude. You put in a lot of quality. You're informative.
It's getting better.
Yeah, and so everybody else, I'll share a link in the comments, or you can find him on YouTube as well as Sick and Awful. And so thank you, Brian. Jesse, I don't think you do anything right now that you want to share, but you can.
Nope, I do not. I do not put myself out there.
Until now you are. Now, if you go on another podcast, you can be like, hey, you can also check me out on this podcast. So
I will say one topic that we missed that we can hold for the next one is literally the post that you made about what's the main causes of stress and mental health in men. We didn't even touch on that. So next time.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that. And in the group, because I mentioned the men's group that we are all a part of, I did post a poll earlier, and that was just for the group and group engagement. We will absolutely, when we're ready for episodes, be pulling some of our topics of discussion from our conversations in that group. But we do all kinds of cool stuff in that group. I don't know. I'm considering creating a specific gender specific group as well, maybe in the future. But in that group, I try and create all kinds of engagement. We have weekly check-ins on Mondays, and I try and do it on Fridays or at some point at the end of the week. We have polls that we'll post. We do, group playlists and things that we've done in the past to try and, create a space where it's not just, hey, post and vent your bullshit. Like I want it to, and we want it to be more quality. Like, okay, how can we help you develop relationships, solve your problems, find support when you need it. And that'll be how we continue to do it. And yeah, you're right, Jesse. We will pull topics from there. And so maybe that will be one that we do next time. All right. So if nobody's got anything else, thank you again, everybody out there. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. And again, thank you to both my guests. You can hang out if you want. But
I got to get the kiddo to bed. So
yeah,
I'm going to get it. I'm hungry. My girl's waiting.
All right,
thank you guys again. Thank you so much.
Yep. Bye-bye.